What choices that you see people making with their lives that you would never make? Before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience. Story 1. Staying with a partner you hated. I know so many people who married people they just kind of kept dating but couldn't stand. I don't know why you'd legally attach yourself to a person you genuinely dislike out of convenience or routine. Story 2. Marrying someone you clearly aren't a match with. BC. You're afraid of starting over or being alone. I used to think that the worst thing in life was to end up all alone. It's not. The worst thing in life is ending up with people who make you feel all alone. Robin Williams. Story 3. I don't know. Every single choice I said I'd never make, I ended up making despite my best intentions and got punched in the face by karma. So my answer is, I will never choose to actively judge people for situations I think I'm too smart, good to get myself into, because life has a way of humbling you. Story 4. Littering. Throwing paper towels on the ground in the bathroom. Not putting the cart away at the grocery store. Parking in a way that prevents other people from parking because you didn't pay attention to the spots. People might think those are all trivial or borderline unnecessary things to pay attention to, but I think they're quite important, and that a society that ceases to care about the little things will create much bigger problems in the long run. Story 5. Being a legit crash out, like someone who genuinely cannot control themselves and their emotions and lets it up their lives in many ways. I know several people going through this right now, and it's painful to watch, but there's nothing you can say or do to help people who don't want to help themselves realize that it's a terrible way to go through life. Story 6. I'm glad there's plenty of us who find it weird to repeatedly have children with uncommitted partners. I actually don't think it's all that weird to settle, though. I wouldn't LOL, but the concept is completely understandable and logical to me from different perspectives. Story 7. None. The moment you start judging is the moment that same storm starts brewing for you. I'd like to think I wouldn't make certain choices, but really I have no idea what I would do if I was in certain situations. Because some situations are impossible. Story 8. Spending 1,000 plus on a meal. My sister, very successful lawyer, enjoy this kind of fancy restaurant. When she passed the bar, my father took her to eat in the Eiffel Tower. It was hella expensive. And when I'm dragged in this kind of place, I hate it. Why is there 4 knives and 5 forks? What are these elvish plates with eldritch sauce? Why is my steak smaller than a Happy Meal? No wine for me, I don't drink. I'll just have a soda. How much? Water for me. And since I don't like all these weird plate from outer space, I have to watch that poor waiter jumping through a circle of fire to try to propose something I'd like. Poor guy. I spent 2 hours bored and went to a fast food last time. For my 30th birthday, I took my family to a steakhouse. The very concept of overpaying food to this point is alien to me. I get that it's supposed to be good, but I'm still hungry. At this price, I could fly to another country. There has to be a better way to spend this amount of money. Story 9. Hookup culture, period. I'm not the person who believes in purity culture or after marriage, but I also cannot stand the thought of sleeping with random people I met a few hours or days ago. Not to mention that it puts me at a higher risk of STDs and unwanted pregnancies. Story train. Lip filler, plastic surgery. I hear and see so many horror stories, it's simply not worth it. I include LASIK in this. My vision is absolute ass, and I used to wonder if it was worth it, but now all this shit's coming out about people who ended up with chronic pain, like sand or needles in their eyes from it, blurry vision. Yeah, not worth it. We'll just keep paying for contacts and glasses. I will never ever get surgery unless it's medically necessary. Story 11. Letting their cats be outdoor cats, or even indoor-outdoor, is something I would never allow my cats to be. Cats hunt for fun and harm wild populations, but also, humans aren't very kind to cats, and I've seen way too many intentionally hurt. My cats will forever be indoors where they are safe. Story 12. Smoking. I don't understand why anyone my age, early 30s or younger, even starts given what we know about it. I hear a lot of people say it's stress relief, but to me, worrying about all of the potential health side effects would just make me more worried. That would be the opposite of helpful for my stress. I have a lot of sympathy for people who are struggling with addiction, but that doesn't mean I understand what made the appeal outweigh the dangers. Story 13. My brother was homeless and then got very lucky when someone hit my car while he was driving. He sued and got $50K. Refuses to file taxes on it, not putting any of it away to grow. Bought a motorcycle, guitar, spending money to go into the city all the time, and staying at fancy hotels. He's gonna blow through that money so fast and have the IRS on his ass. Story 14. Getting married because you think you have to. Maybe you're pregnant, maybe the aunties are starting to talk, maybe you're 35 and it's just time. Don't. Just don't do it. Marriage is hard. Worth it, but hard. Unless you truly can't imagine living your life with that person, don't do it. I'm in my 50s, been happy 98% of the time, but I'm looking at friends who've been married this long, don't really like each other, never really did. Just graduated college, married that guy, bought a house in the suburbs, had 3 kids, a dog, and an affair, and they are miserable. I'm lucky. I still adore my husband, and he feels the same. But the kids are grown, the dog has passed on, and there's 2 strangers stuck in a life they hate. Story 15 SOHM, who is completely financially dependent on their spouse, or any relationship dynamic where I'm completely financially dependent. Being a SOHM isn't wrong, and I get the logic and financial soundness for it for folks. But for me personally, I value my independence too much and am just too well aware of how things can be fine for years in a relationship, then go sour. I just don't want to chance it by being totally at someone's mercy financially and then be screwed should it go left. Story 16, getting laid off, taking out a $10K loan to get through the jobless period, getting a job several months later, and before even starting work, going out and leasing a brand new car with a $700 a month payment plan. Watched a friend of mine do this 5 years ago, and they are still paying off that loan and the car, having largely been living paycheck to paycheck since because of it. I just couldn't believe it. I worked way too hard to get out of living paycheck to paycheck to be willing to spend that kind of money without solid income. Story 17, letting their grown adult children live in their home rent-free and not have any job is wild to me. I mean, if the person is disabled, of course, your job as a parent is to take care of them or make sure they have access to care. But you letting your able-bodied adult child stay at your house, rent-free with no job? Make that fool get a job and pay rent. Story 18, rushing. Gotta graduate. Gotta get a job. Gotta get married. Gotta have kids. Not at all in that order, but it's always rushed. Everyone's worried about what someone else thinks, and they want to be accepted into a group. I'm perfectly okay watching from the outside. Story 19, tattoos, influencer culture, forgetting how to read and write, feeling bad for people who put themselves in the position they are in through bad choices and countless chances to avoid the damned outcome. People who embrace being a victim, avoiding the strains of life to seek endless comfort, peer pressure, misery-loving company. People acting like bots, playing League of Legends when Dota exists, avoiding exercise, refusing to admit themselves, and people who just want to watch the world burn because they made a critical mistake at a young age and now just want to be someone else's problem because they feel like they are stuck here with no lessons to give. Story 20, being greedy with money. My husband works for a car dealership in service, and they get appointments given to them even if they've worked with a customer before or not. It's not a guarantee they will work again with them. They give basically all of the appointments to one guy because he's been there since the store opened. So they have 6 advisors and 5 of them with nothing to do because they gave all the appointments to one dude. If it were me, I would be giving away my appointments so my coworkers didn't go broke. Work shouldn't be competition to survive. Story 21, the richest guy on the planet in the most powerful country in existence, and he's investigating and shutting down social programs that benefit hundreds of millions of people. Shouldn't his goal be to make the world a better place to live? If the richest guy in the most powerful country can't figure that out, then the world doesn't need people that rich. Story 22, gambling. For some reason, gambling never made sense to me. The moment I realized the machines, tables, etc. are controlled by people, can be configured, and card games can be fixed, even sports games, I was like 14. I just saw gambling as a complete waste of money. You're the occasional guy we all know that walked into a casino with $100 and walked out with $5,000. For every guy that pulled that off, there are at least 10 people that walked in with $5,000 and walked out with $0. On vacation, though, I put $5 on red with my friends, and if it's hits, we know we're going to have a good night. Yup, we stole that from the show Entourage lol. Story 23, having kids with a dude or woman that already has kids that he does not actively parent, minimum 50%. You played yourself. So many women will have kids with a man that doesn't take care of the ones he already has, and then are crying when he doesn't care about the kids he has with them either. What did you think this was? Story 24. Buying low-cost premium items might look logical, but I have realized over the time that big brands charge money up front because of the service they provide. I recently bought a sound system from an Indian company named Boat. They refuse to sell other accessories, so basically if something happens to the product, it is just a waste of your time and money. I'm only buying from big companies from now on. Story 25, dating. Because I literally don't feel the emotions that are usually considered a requirement for most people to date, the cons to me just vastly outweigh the pros. Your chances of being murdered or raped skyrocket. You hardly get any time to yourself. You have to deal with their baggage on top of your own baggage. Moving in with someone brings up a whole host of problems. Their finances directly impact yours. You waste a fucking of time and money going on dates and buying gifts. Don't even get me started on the cost of weddings and rings, not to mention all of the bullshit you have to deal with if the marriage falls through. It sounds miserable and exhausting, honestly. I don't know how so many people do it. Story 26, I already know this comment is going to piss off a lot of people out there, but it's something I don't understand for the life of me, and not much I can do about that. Basically, I don't get why people choose to become police officers. Of all things to be, of all ways to help people in society, the choice to do it in a hands-on way by punishing bad and often dangerous people is beyond me. This confusion was exacerbated when I only recently found out how little cops actually earn when you consider what they do, except for the ones that have been there for 20 years. I'm also perplexed in rare cases where attractive women or intelligent men choose that pathway in life, because it just seems like they probably had more options than the average overgrown playground bully who got drawn to it in some part because they didn't have anything else they could really be. Once again, just letting you know that I'm prepared to get some hate for this opinion. That's okay. I still feel confused by it. And I don't believe that most cops actually join the force because they're driven to help people. Gem O. Story 27, doing high-paying, unskilled labor at a young age. I saw lots of people that I went to school with start various construction-type jobs when we finished school. They were earning $800, $900 a week, and I was making about $300 a week as an apprentice. They regularly teased me about my low wages. Having finished my apprenticeship, I have upskilled and now sit in the top 5% of earners in the country, while the people I mentioned are in the same job but can't afford to retrain or upskill. I remember my mom explaining exactly that situation to me when she was convincing me to go and get some sort of qualification or skill. Story 28. Getting back with an abusive and cheating ex that already has 3 baby mamas at the ripe age of 22. Love my friend, but Jesus Christ, I worry about her. There's really nothing anyone can do. She doesn't listen. And even when it seems like she's finally opened up her eyes to the horrible situation, she gets back together with him. Story 29. My friend and her husband had a baby despite not being financially stable or understanding what babies are like. I think they just really romanticize the idea of it. So now they're really struggling. And I feel for them. But what were they thinking trying for a baby when he makes 11 an hour and she makes 15 an hour? Story 30, I see some like-minded folks in replies, but I'll throw in my list anyway. Having kids despite not wanting them. Being a hypocrite just so you're on good standing with other people, especially awful people. Settling for the first person to cross your path just so you're not lonely, and you absolutely will be, and worse, trapped with someone you never wanted. Going to church or any other religious place just because everyone else does, because you're afraid of being alone and assumed to be evil for not believing in God. Story 31. Have a boring job by choice, gambling, smoking nicotine, care about stocks, caring what others post online and how, being scared to be cringe and being mean as to random people and your friends without asking yourself if you've ever done something like that, which you probably would. And most of all, judging someone for doing these things you commented without understanding why they choose them. Everyone has their life. Focus on yourself. Story 32. People are so bad with money, they say the system is unfair, which it is, but then they use that as their excuse why they don't have a dime saved for retirement. That is scary shit. The system is rigged and you should fight to change it, but you also need to work within the system to live the best life you can. Story 33. Having no financial plan. I see people spend their entire paycheck every month no matter how much they make, buy expensive cars, high rent mortgage, and have zero financial knowledge, investment, diversified investment, compound interest, rainy day fund, emergency fund, etc. Their idea of investments is gambling on stocks and cryptocurrency. Story 34. Not making choices. A lot of people actually like life is just something that happens to them and they have no control over it. It's just the way I am. That's how we've always done things. Change is the only constant you have. Get used to it or be miserable your entire life. Story 35. I know a lot of people with good credit that overextends their spending. Hom and her have good jobs. They own their home. Each has a new vehicle, a boat, camper, motorcycle, making outrageous payments on all of it. She got laid off and had to take a job making a lot less. Now they still have those things, but no extra money or time to use them. They are upside down on everything except the house. She finally got a better job, but they have been playing catch-up for a couple years. During that time, they traded in their cars for new ones with higher payments. Those are choices I would not make. Story 36, many. But here's the thing. I live a different life. I have different skills, different preferences, different personality. So I often remind myself that when I see someone with 6 kids and think, Jesus Christ, I would never put myself through that. Maybe they like it, who knows? Story 37. Now, not that many, to be honest, because I'm already 36. Not that mistakes still can't be made as you enter middle age. I mean, cheating on a spouse, being a poor mother or father, or buying a house you really can't afford. House poor. But it seems like more mistakes are made in the excitement of youth, and most people settle down as time goes on, gaining wisdom and experience. That said, when I was younger, I saw a shit ton of people messing up, and they were doing things I wanted no part of. 1, hard. 2, bullying others for laughs. 3, excessive drinking. I liked the going out and our friends, but pounding 12 plus beers in an evening in order to get drunk is not good. 4, early pregnancy, teens or early 20s, while not being financially stable and in a flaky relationship. Prioritizing immature pleasures, smoking pot, and playing video games, instead of being able to show up for a job, i.e., inability to hold down even a minimum wage job. Story 38, 2008-2009-ish. But any person I know that drank 3 original Four Locos went to jail. After 1, you would be feeling solid, and after 2, you know that you are fucked up and shouldn't get too much crazier or shit will go downhill. But in that span, 3 people I know of personally, and I'm sure many more, drank 3 Four Locos, and every one of those 3 blacked out and ended up going to jail. I could see the correlation even in my 2 Four Locos state and knew that 3 would always be a forbidden amount. So never drink 3 original Four Locos or you will go to jail. Story 39, overworking. When you have more than enough money to be comfortable, you lose your hobbies and struggle in retirement. You aren't promised to live long. Your better years are when you are young. You lose track of the source of happiness. Even if you love your job doesn't actually love you back. You have to flush toilets in your oversized house just so they aren't dingy. Story 40, religion, especially at an unhealthy level, i.e., it becomes your entire identity. It's an addiction just like every other fix, and a breeding ground for mass manipulation and exploitation that often gets overlooked and swept under the rug. Unfortunately, almost everyone I knew growing up will never see that. Story 41, having kids and being pressured into having kids. They're expensive. They're time-consuming. I'm mentally and physically fucked up and don't want to pass on my genes. I'd probably hate them and hit them and scream at them like my dad did to us kids growing up, because breaking generational cycles is hard no matter how much therapy I go to. I couldn't and wouldn't be able to take care of them. My wife is okay with not having kids. I got a vasectomy. Good on people who can have kids and raise them, especially with everything going on. But I don't want kids and I'm okay with never having babies. Story 42. Having poor boundaries in communication, emo, means that you shouldn't be jumping into intense romantic relationships anytime soon. Not until you can start slowly mastering advocating for yourself. You don't have to be perfect, but you have to be able to put your foot down when your mental and physical health calls for it. There are exceptions, but I feel like they're rare and rely on a lot of luck. Story 43. Oh my gosh, I just ran into a former coworker in the same trade, and he's accruing as much debt as possible in order to declare bankruptcy. He started with a few small personal loans and credit card debt from a hard start in the trade and low pay. But instead of wanting to pay it back, he's now aiming to get to 6-figure debt, ostensibly advised by a banker, before he can declare bankruptcy and have his debt erased. This sounds terrifying to me. Story 44. Buying electric vehicles half or full. I don't care. I don't need new stress. People getting into crypto seems like a lot of risk for nothing. 3D printing seems cool. I don't have the patience to sit for hours on end trusting it to not up. Being transgender for offended, not against it, just seems like you weren't given enough attention as a kid. Or maybe given too much and you haven't figured out how to cope with being average like everyone else. Again, not against the trans thing, but seems like it's been more for attention than an actual body dysmorphia disorder. I blame Bruce Jenner. His kids got popular. He wasn't in the Olympics anymore, so he faded out. and he did something drastic just to stay relevant. Get mad or whatever. Like I said, I'm not against it. I just think COVID gave some of you too much free time. Story 45, getting a master's or doctoral degree. You could be Einstein, but you're never going to get a job good enough to pay off that debt and love comfortably unless you have wealthy parents or a wealthy partner. Not to mention, it takes years to get a job that pays even close to worth it. Story 46, smoking tobacco. It's not as common in my age group, but I know people who do it. My mother smoked before I was born and went through hell when she quit after getting pregnant with me. She tells me even now, 21 years later, she still gets a craving to smoke a cigarette, so I'll never do it. I'm not sure if you're more likely to be addicted if your parent was, but I'm not going to risk it. Story 47, buying new cars they can't afford all the time. I have poor impulse control, but I don't have that bad of impulse control. I mean, $80K for a Jeep? Seriously? Whether would you pay that much for a Jeep that'll break in 3 years and will retain 30% value if you're lucky? I see people buying 60, 70, 80K vehicles and make 30K a year. It's like do they afford it? There's no way. Are they way over away for a house? Because it's pretty not considering how much insurance, upkeep, taxes, monthly payments are. It's insane. Story 48, living life without taking any risks, even low-stake risks that could yield high rewards. People who do the stereotypical, socially acceptable way of life, doing whatever is expected of them, never branching out, always conforming, etc. In my opinion, life is boring that way. Not taking risks of any kind leads to resentment, contempt, and complacency. At 80 years old, they'll be the regular at the bar talking about the potential they had when they were younger. Story 49, having children while broke, and often without being in a stable long-term relationship. I'm 23, and so many people I knew from high school have been having kids for years already, and they're stuck in the same city making minimum wage. I know this because they complain about their lives on Facebook, LMAO. Story 50, having second and third children when they can barely afford the first. I'm one and done against my own choices, health reasons. But the more I think about all the special and cool things we'll be able to do with her that we possibly couldn't if we had two, I feel better. Alternatively, my friends are still having to have their in-laws buy diapers and formula while they struggle to pay their mortgage and are trying for number two. To each their own, just not for me. Story 51. We were visiting a couple and their child at dinner time. The dad only made a small soup for their toddler. He warmed it up on the stove, stirred it a couple of times, tasted it once or twice, and then fed his toddler at the counter. Neither of the parents sat down or ate anything. My spouse and I were so disturbed by the scene, we took a break from the friendship for decades. Both parents grew up poor in religious households with way too many kids, 6 to 7 kids in each family. We had fed the couple on many social occasions before they started having kids. Story 52, I have a friend who is mentally unstable. Like she requires a hospitalization every 2 months. She married an abusive man and then had a kid with him. Even after he nearly killed her, she has gotten back together with him. I could never. Another person I know struggles a lot staying clean from meth. She lost custody of her 2 kids and is now pregnant with her on, again off, again boyfriend. Story 53. That's definitely a tough one. Seeing how some people jump into life-changing decisions without much thought really makes you wonder about their future consequences. It's like they're rolling the dice with their life's stability. It makes me really appreciate the power of careful planning and commitment, especially when it comes to big life decisions like family planning. Story 54, whining and complaining that the world is out to get them and never attempting to do anything to change themselves or their environment. I used to be younger, hate myself, feel imposter syndrome, feel I wouldn't meet my potential, etc. when I was younger. But then I applied myself, and though it took many years, many trials and tribulations, I know for a certainty had I stayed in America, I would be an obese slob with health and mental problems. Now I'm healthy, wealthy, skinny, and as mentally well as I could be. The complete opposite of who would I have been had I not made all the choices I made in life. Story 55, having a child just so they can take care of you when they're older, and then guilting them at a young age. Don't you want to take care of mommy, daddy? Like, you really just had a child so they change your diapers one day? It doesn't bother me when family decides to step in and become a caretaker for an elderly relative. It's just fucked up to instill that, from a young age, the only reason you're here is because of me to take care of me, from a parent. Story 56, constantly hating people. I hate people. I do. But at the same time, the minute amount of effort it takes to be nice to everyday people like cashiers and waitstaff, random person on the same aisle as you trying to get through, the little kid going door to door for something stupid, etc. Basic manners in public. Also, public doesn't move at your pace. You move with it. It's no one else's fault but yours. You're in a time crunch. Emergencies happen, but they're rare. And if people would chill out on the daily, you can spot and even assist with them. Story 57, having children. It's not that I hate children. It's more the fact I'm not sure my mental health, I have bipolar, is stable enough to support a child. Sure, I'm doing mentally okay and am well right now, but what if my mental health gets bad again? I lived with my mentally ill brother as a child, and it wasn't exactly a nice childhood. I have CPTSD due to him. I just don't want a child to have a childhood like that. On top of that, having a child, you have to accept that they might get sick. It's a risk every parent has when they have a child. What if the kid gets cancer and dies? I'm selfish and I don't want to live that. I also don't think I'd be a good parent. Kids deserve to be wanted, loved, and have a good childhood. I don't think I can give that to them. Story 58, having a kid for the wrong reasons. A lot of unhappy people in unhappy relationships have kids thinking it will make things better, or wanting another kid when the relationship starts to struggle. If I was going to have a kid, I would want it to be because I am with someone I love, feel secure with, have a plan with, but I personally won't because of some health concerns that make it risky, and I would like to not pass on. Story 59. Honestly, one thing I'd never do is follow the crowd just for the sake of fitting in. Like, I see so many people making choices because it's what everyone else is doing. Whether it's the whole buy the latest trends thing or just pretending to like something because it's cool. I get that people want to belong, but I'd rather stick to my own vibe, even if it means being a little different. Oh, and I definitely wouldn't just coast through life without thinking about the future. Too many people act like they've got all the time in the world to figure things out, but I feel like you've got to start making some solid decisions now, or it's going to catch up to you later. Story 60, working a soulless corporate 9-5. For the record, more power to those who do it because they find joy in the stability their jobs bring, or to those who actually like their full-time work, or who do so out of necessity. It's just not something I personally can do anymore. I gave up 5 years of my life to a dead corporate job and just can no longer square spending 40, 50 hours of my actual life doing it for something I have zero passion and investment in. Story 61, getting married, choosing a career, having children, etc., solely out of a sense of duty pressure from others. There's nothing wrong with doing all of these things, as in when you want, of course. But I still see so many people just resign themselves to doing what others expect of them, to the socially acceptable schedule, because they can't or won't make life decisions of their own. By the time they know what they want, achieving it is so much harder because they are now in a relationship, marriage, possibly with children, living somewhere incompatible with where they want to be, without the level of education they need to proceed, etc., etc. There's nothing wrong with taking your time in life, and if you never marry or have children, or decide that you're not a big career person either, that's also totally okay. You can just be you. Story 62, eating animal products. Horrible for your health, the environment, for society via pandemics, and for the slaughterhouse workers who become mentally damaged from sociopathy to PTSD, and obviously the non-human animals that get brought into the world forcibly, are mutilated, basically tortured until they become fat enough, then slaughtered. Story 63. Well, my dad chose his wife, who threatened to kill all of us in a murder-suicide over me and my siblings. He is choosing to miss my wedding day because I disrespected his wife, even though a month ago he was telling everyone she was abusing him and lying and being a total cunt. I messaged him to tell him that my son, who he's seen maybe 6 times in 6 years, even though he lives 30 minutes away, isn't going to be small forever, and he needs his grandfather in his life. Blocked immediately after that, like what? Story 64, getting into crazy obscene amounts of credit card debt. I'm not talking about, oh, an emergency came up and we had to put it on the cards, but like enough debt that they are trying to pay off the cards with other cards and just dining deeper and deeper into debt. I've never even had a credit card and I'm nearly 40. I have great credit, and if I owe anyone more than $20, I can't think of anything else. Story 65. Why do women ever get into relationships with men? I've been on this earth 34 years and have never met a single one who genuinely had my best interests at heart. You can blame libido, maybe, but the isn't even good because they're so selfish and seem to be wary of the existence of the clit. I went through a phase in my youth where I sought out casual relationships with men, and it was an uphill battle to actually get anything out of it. I had a good experience, maybe 1x10. The rest was so unpleasant that even those few good experiences didn't survive as pleasant memories over the years. Next story, what was easier to do 100 years ago than it is today? Story 1, earning money from just trading goods from one place to another. For $1,000, $2,000, you could buy a truck, buy apples from Philadelphia, drive them go NY, buy textiles in NY and return to Philadelphia to sell them. Repeat, scale the business to have multiple trucks and employees repeat. $1,000 in 1925 is about 18 kilos in 2025, so achievable for someone to start out doing this after working for a few years in a factory. How everything is monopolized and to do any kind of real good commodity trading requires a huge upfront cost. Story 2, changing your identity. There were barely any photo IDs in 1925, and social security numbers didn't exist yet, and written proof of identity was rarely, if ever, requested of most people. It was a relatively simple thing to move to a different area, especially if it was fairly rural or remote. Just claim you are now John Smith, and most people would accept that. You didn't have to provide ID to rent, buy a house, open a bank account, or apply for a job. You could just slip into that new identity, and no one would ever have reason to question it. Story 3, pay for a baby's birth in a hospital. We found the hospital bill for when my mother was born. I don't recall the exact amount, but it was ridiculously low, way below $100 for a 3-day stay. They charged something like 25 cents a day for baby care. That hospital still stands today, 100 years later. Story 4, build a house, grow your own food. Basically anything to do with being self-sufficient. And someone is going to say, no, it's easier to build a house today with all the technology. Yeah, once you get through all the paperwork, permits, regulations, and finally get to the part where you have to pay other people to do it for you because you're not allowed to do anything yourself. Story 5, start over. Move town, Josh country, start a new career, possibly even related to your skill set. Carry or have your money sitting in a Swiss bank account. Don't tell anyone and don't give any reason for a thorough background check. So much harder to figure out people's deal when they have no SSN or Facebook to look up. Story 6, disappearing and starting a new life. Pre-internet age and the advent of surveillance equipment on every street corner, you could relatively easily pack up and move across the country, use a different name and fit in, and most likely no one would question it. Story 7, buy a car, weirdly. You could walk onto a lot, pay a couple $100 in cash and drive off. You didn't have to do hours of paperwork, haggling, or deal with extended warranties. If it was your first car, you'd probably get some instruction on how to start it, how to drive it, and how to put oil, gas, and water in it regularly. Story 8, send multiple letters back and forth throughout the day. We can text and email nowadays, but in Victorian London, it was possible to ask someone over for dinner in the morning and get a reply a few hours later. BTW just realized that the Victorian era is over 100 years ago at this point, but whatever. Story 9, being someone important. The Smith was not nobody. He was the Smith, the electrician, carpenter, hunter. With the thing that distance and knowledge isn't a problem anymore, many people lost their identity, their purpose. You can be whatever you want, but you are expandable. The majority is just a gap filler who, if missing, can be replaced with ease. Story 10, get lost. Start over again in a new town or place without anybody knowing who you were. The speed of communication and information exchange has impinged upon people's privacy. Your credit score, your reputation, and facts about you follow you where you go. Story 11, get married. In Asis Ansari's book, he talks about how back then most people meet their partner in the neighborhood or school. It means you didn't look as long, and you also probably had a smaller chance of being happy with that choice, but it was easier to find someone to get hitched to. Also often still a bit more of a business arrangement that just like men needed someone to look after literally everything, and women needed an income to get out of their parents' house. Women's freedom was tied to getting married, ironically, because the woman roommates phase wasn't common. Story 12, find and keep a spouse. Don't get me wrong, I applaud the fact that today's men and women don't need to have a spouse to survive. But 100 years ago, it was very difficult for a woman to provide for herself, and because men weren't taught homemaking skills, men needed women just as much. Your typical man had no idea how to feed himself. Once married, you tended to stay married, not always a good thing, as divorce was downright scandalous and often impossible until attitudes and laws began changing in the late 1960s. No-fault divorce wasn't really a thing until the 1970s. Story 13. 100 years ago, some things were easier, such as finding a job without extensive qualifications or living a simpler life with less reliance on technology. People also had less financial pressure, as living costs were lower, and many jobs required less formal education. Additionally, privacy was easier to maintain as there was less surveillance and fewer digital footprints to worry about. Story 14. I was watching ER the other day, and in the episode, the person serving as ER chief resident, it turned out, stole someone else's transcripts and faked her way to be a doctor and running an ER. I know this is fiction, but a real-life example would be Frank Abagnale. People used to be able to fake identities, credentials, or be someone else entirely with minimal effort. Up until more recent times, I think it would have been trivial to create a new identity and fake some credentials and be whatever you wanted to be. Then if you get caught, just move a few hundred miles away and repeat. Story 15, meditate. Our attention spans are shot. I would love to experience meditation through the mind of someone who couldn't conceive of an iPhone, but who has the time. Using one's imagination is another. Our brains are now primarily input machines, not output machines. Even our best-paid creatives are mainly just skilled at regurgitating input. Story 16. I honestly think finding a person was easier in the past because your social network was a literal social network actively working to connect people. My sister is good friends with Jenna, whose brother's friend met her when last we went to town. That said, finding a good person was likely harder. Not to mention if the only reason the woman is with me is because I offer protection from the church and can own land and a bank account. Unlike her, that's not love. That's survival. Story 17, taking care of a very sick parent. Families were bigger and closer together. If you were ill, you likely had several adult daughters, daughter-in-law, and grandchildren to take care of you. You also often didn't last long. By the time your symptoms disabled you, you usually had days to weeks left, rarely more than a few months. Now, the average caregiver is in her late 50s, possibly juggling a job, and is doing that caregiving solo, often for many years.